Well, hello, I'm Lexi, and this is the Prodigal's Purpose podcast. Today, I thought it would be fun to do a little storytelling and talk a little bit about my faith journey. So, we're going to start at the beginning, okay? So, my parents had me very young, and I am what you call a cradle Catholic. This is fun Catholic lingo, but for those of you who don't know what that means, it means that I have, from the moment I was born, been raised in a Catholic household, Catholic school, all that. It means from day one on earth, I was raised in the church. And so something that was interesting about my childhood is my mom was a cradle Catholic and came from a line of very strong and devout Catholics. She was raised Catholic herself and just continues on and on and on. Probably from a lot of our Irish heritage, I would give that credit to. And my mom's maternal side were very devout Catholics, and a lot of their spouses, if they weren't Catholic, later converted. And so I was just surrounded by a lot of Catholics growing up. So it was very normal to be going to Mass on Sunday. Now, something that's a little bit different is my biological father was not Catholic. And so when my parents got married, they were married in the Catholic Church, and my mom was kind of the one heading the Catholic faith. My dad, I think he would consider himself a Christian, but he really didn't associate or affiliate with Catholicism. My mom was the one who really practiced it. She was the one that made sure I got baptized and those things. And so my parents got divorced and annulled when I was very young. It just was not a good fit and not good for me growing up that they be together. And so my mom got their marriage annulled, and she continued to raise me in the faith. I give a lot of credit to my extended family for instilling my faith. I think showing my faith is huge. My Nana and Pa, so that's my mom's parents, my grandparents, Nana and Pa, they were very devout Catholic farmers in little Hartwell, Nebraska. That's not even a town, it's a village, okay? And part of a beautiful farming community. And Nana's parents, so my grandma and grandpa, they were hardcore Catholic, like crazy, beautiful, practicing the faith. They were the ones that, taught my Nana the faith. And then when my Nana and Pa got married, for my Pa witnessing and experiencing the Catholic faith, he was raised Protestant, but then he converted and then it just keeps going, right? So grandma and grandpa, my great grandma and grandpa, I was really blessed to have them a huge chunk of my childhood. And I mean, my family, we're awesome, but we're kind of oddballs. I have two uncles who are literally 2 and 4 years older than me. So they're like my brothers or my brunkles, if you will. And so us three, I feel like a lot of my core young Catholic like fundamentals were shared with them. And so going to holy days, we would all go together. Like I remember, I did not understand this, but I remember my Nana took us to Mass, and then we had to change into our costumes, and then we went trick-or-treating because the next day is the Holy Day, All Saints Day. So like truly instilled, like, of course you have to go to Mass before All Saints Day, and things of that nature that I think people outside the Catholic faith would be like, why do you do that? I didn't question it because that's what we did. And so my grandparents were a huge part of that as well, just in how they lived their lives. You could see there were always prayer booklets everywhere. They had their rosary beads all the time. Anytime somebody left their house to get into a car to go home, usually, or like go on a trip, they would not let us leave until grandma and grandpa blessed us with holy water before we got in the car. So just cute moments like that. My Nana lived in Hartwell, and the nearest like bigger town is Minden, which is about a 15-minute drive, and she taught there and stuff. And so there would be a lot of times where if we were traveling from Hartwell to Minden with my brunkles, my brother uncles, we would like say our prayers. And yeah, and I think those little years were really formative because it was shown to me by example to live the faith. We don't just clock in on Sunday in this family. We incorporate prayer and we incorporate Christ in everything. And, prayer before meals and just all those things. And so I have a big shout out to my extended family because I don't think I was really grateful for that until later on in life when I look back and I'm like, wow, that spoke volumes to me, and I was only 3, 4, 5, whatever. There's just these little moments and memories of, yeah, we grew up as a family, but like, I don't know, just like all the phases of life that occurred in that church and all those Christmases and Easters and weddings and just like the rich church history in my family history is super cool. Like my great-great-great-grandfather built or helped build the church for that farming community and was a part of the first group of Knights of Columbus to go out of there. And just, I don't know, it just feels, I don't know why, but that little church just feels like home. So either way, my extended family was a huge part when I was really little of instilling my faith. And my mom really wanted me to have a good Catholic education. And so growing up, I literally attended a Catholic school from first grade all the way to, college, but I chose college myself. So I'll say high school, give her credit for high school. The only reason I didn't go in kindergarten was because when we lived in New York, the Catholic school kindergarten only did half days, and that just did not work with my mom's work schedule. And so I did 1 year in public school, and then I hopped right over to St. Joseph's once I was old enough. Yeah, so I would say my faith was just a part of life when I was really little. And sometimes I didn't really understand what we were doing or what was going on, but I knew this is what my family does. And I liked that. Sometimes I drug my feet a little bit too, but I think that's just being a child. I remember my public school experience was only kindergarten, but while I was in public school, I went to CCD on Wednesdays, and I really appreciated that, and I liked it. I will say it is not the same as having or entering in a Catholic school, but I think these CCD programs do such a good job of working with people's schedules and people's phases of lives and just the resources people have. That really helped me start things when I was 6, when I was in kindergarten. I do remember one of the biggest God moments in kindergarten, which sounds weird, but I remember recess was just the bomb, okay? And I think I learned something super cool in CCD. I don't know. I had a loud mouth, so if I thought something was cool, I thought everybody would want to hear it because I'm saying it. And I remember I was telling people about God and about heaven, which I would pay real money to hear a cute little 6-year-old explain to me who God is. But I was I was blabbing to my buddies about Jesus, and I was laying it down. And a lot of them were Christian too and understood it too, but we were just talking about Jesus. And I remember I started the convo. We all were talking. And I remember a teacher walked by, kind of stopped a little bit, and she kept walking, and then she came back, and I was in the middle of some moving storytelling speech of mine, being very theatrical, and she very sweetly, but she said, "We don't talk about that here." And I turned to her and I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "No, we don't talk about that." I'm like, and at first I'm I didn't say a bad word. I was I didn't, we're just talking about God. And she's like, "No, we don't talk about that." And she left, and I was just so confuzzled. I thought talking about God was a good thing. And I remember turning to my friends, and we moved further away, and then we whispered about it, and we're still going to talk about God, whatever. I don't even think I really realized at the time I just remember thinking, that's not naughty. I've done bad stuff, and that's not. I think I could think of worse things. I just thought it was so weird. I don't know. And then once I was in first grade, I transferred to a Catholic school, and I just loved it. My class was so tiny, I think there were 8 of us total. There were not many of us, but I remember really liking religion class. I was wow, CCD every day. It's so dope. And I think having that space to explore and to learn and to discuss on a daily basis is so good because I think it normalized it for me. And coming from public to private, I know I was little. I was only 6 to 7, so it's not I'm some genius taking notes and documenting the differences. I do remember I felt more comfortable at a Catholic school, and I think that's good. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. The everyday going to mass thing or doing the Station of the Cross, I did not have the virtue of patience growing up, and I know me, and I definitely counted ceiling tiles and sighed and rolled my eyes. I didn't understand the sitting through the church stuff versus participating stuff, but I think that's also just being a kid. So I'm going to give the excuse of I didn't know, and hopefully I've grown in a little bit more holiness since then. But during this phase, I saw my biological father a lot more regularly during visitations, weekends and stuff. And I would say that did impact my growth in my faith, especially since he didn't understand or approve of Catholicism. I think it is a real gift for a child to grow up in a household where or just have both parents be supportive of one religion. Because when you hear two conflicting things, and it's not just like two things that are different, it was a lot of like, no, the Catholic Church is wrong and here's why, or no, you doing these Catholic things is wrong because. It just was really hard for me, and I loved my Catholic faith. I remember that from the get-go. Like, I was like, forget Pokemon cards, your girl was collecting holy cards. Like, it was aggressive. I loved the saints. I loved holy cards. I loved the like things of my faith, because my little peanut brain couldn't understand like the deep like doctrine part yet, but the tradition, I loved the tradition and the stories of our faith, just stuff like that. I really loved it, and I saw beauty and goodness in it, and it was attractive to me. But every other weekend going to a place where I went to different Christian churches, I went to different Bible schools and stuff. And I remember, raising my hand and answering a Bible question, and they say, no, like, that's not right. But that was a right answer at my Catholic school. It was just hard. And I do think I gained good from going to they both were Christian. So I do think it was good to go to a church service, and it was good to get some kind of education of the faith. But have it being conflicting left me confused. And sometimes I felt guilty. Sometimes I felt guilty of my Catholic faith. And I might have a blabbermouth, but I didn't master apologetics at the age of 8. I couldn't defend my faith like I would want to. And when my biological dad would bring up, conflicting points or hardships of the church, and just like truly like big moral dilemmas or big issues that a lot of people have with the Catholic Church or faith, and I couldn't defend it or knew how to answer it, I think he thought, I'm giving her clarity, I'm giving her the truth. I hope that was his intention, was like, no, I'm here to educate. But really, I think it made it worse. I think it made me feel small and dumb, and it made me really hesitant, and it made me fearful to have full faith in it. And I teach in a Catholic school now, and so seeing children have a practicing Catholic household, like two parents household, which I did have majority of the time, it was these visitations that caused confusion in me. But just seeing them have, like more of an open and positive view of the church, and then going through their own faith journey, I think it helps them get to a place where they can truly, firmly confirm their faith, believe their faith, and make it their own and establish their own personal relationship with Jesus. But from this point, I was kind of hesitant. And so growing up as I got older, it was just kind of hard. All my classmates were like 100% in on their faith, and I was just kind of like questioning it, or like trying to be at the same level as them, and I know I wasn't. And it just brought a lot of confusion. I will say the sacrament years, I was always so excited. It was so fun. Like getting ready for First Communion. Oh my goodness. Like I would literally be like flipping through catalogs to pick out the perfect First Communion dress. And I'd have my friends come over and we'd like circle the dresses we'd like, and all the accessories. I felt like a Holy Communion Barbie. It was so fun. And for confirmation, getting to pick my saint and research, like I love stories. And so hearing all the stories of all these amazing, cool, different people, I fell in love with that too. And I loved that. But I do think there's always some questioning in the back of my mind. And back then I really felt guilty for it. And I thought, gosh, what's wrong with me? Nobody else in my class has questions like this. And nobody else in my class is like feeling unsure. And nobody else in my class is like having a problem or like wondering why we do what we do. Because I'm not going to ask it, because I don't want to look crazy or like I don't like Jesus, because I like the guy. I think he's super awesome, but I don't know where to go from here, and I don't know how to be honest about how I feel, because it seems like everybody's sipping the same Kool-Aid, that I want to also be sipping the same Kool-Aid. And I feel like that feeling just got worse and worse over time. I will say, on a positive note, we'll pause and do this, probably the most important or best part of my Catholic education, I think, aside from like the community part, I think that's huge. Like growing up, having kids that are practicing what I'm practicing, and we get to share that together. Those experiences last a lifetime, and my little buddies that went to St. Peter's with me, like I will always have a special place in my heart for them. And we always eye rolled and we're like, oh, we're so done with this place. Like we're too cool. Like oh my gosh, I'm so over this. I think we all had a good time. Or I think if you didn't like your Catholic education, I think we all enjoyed the bond we shared with that. And there's just something beautiful about a community where ideally, I mean, I joined St. Peter's when I was in 3rd grade, but ideally K through 8, you grow up with this little Catholic family almost. I mean, it's pretty beautiful, the connections people make. But aside from the community part, I think the best thing for me was interacting with the religious. I had the sweetest sisters when I was in St. Joseph's at York, and I had never seen like a sister before, interacted with a sister. And we had them, they taught us theology, and then they also were in charge of like library and stuff. And I remember at recess I would run and like talk and play with them. Like I just thought they were the coolest thing, and they would teach me, they would prep me for the sacraments. They were in charge of the choir, and so like they did choir practice every week. Like it was just such a joyful, fun time. I thought like nuns were over here and they had the rulers, you know, they whapped me or something, and that just like was not the case. And then at St. Peter's I had the Christ the King order, and their charism is education and teaching, and I just had so much fun with them. And I think with them the biggest thing is just like their way of preparing you for the sacraments. They were like masterclass level at it, you know, just like breaking down every tiny part and why it's important to us, but also to the mind of a 2nd grader and to the mind of a 5th grader. Do you know how hard it is to like get those kids to wrap their brains around it? They did such a good job in that. And I even remember in 5th grade, a lot of us were like so hyped up, and we were all convinced like we're literally going to become saints. Like the minute we get confirmation done, like we're all going to be forever changed. I think we hyped it up a little bit. Not the gifts and the beauty of confirmation, but just the like, I think we hyped ourselves up a little bit of like, I am a changed man after this. And it's like, nah, bro, like you're in 5th grade, like simmer down. This is a huge step in your faith. You still got some learning and growing to do. And I remember, I think this was my idea. If it wasn't, it definitely was a group thing, but we had these little plaid jumpers, okay? And a lot of times girls wore these sweatshirts on top of the jumper, and they were like navy blue. And Christ the King sisters have a navy blue habit, okay? And so I feel like I'm gonna get in trouble. Either way, I decided that at recess we should start playing sisters, and I was Mother Superior, of course, and we all were our confirmation saint names. So I was Mother Superior, Mother Gianna. I was Mother Gianna for Gianna Mola. And what we did with these sweatshirts is we took them off, and hopefully you get the visual. So we took them off, and then we like put it over, we grabbed the head hole and put it over our head, but then we pulled it back. So it was like a headband on our hair. And so then it looked like a veil. And so we would like walk around, and like we would pray the rosary, or we would like watch EWTN at home. Like I would give them like Catholic homework of what they had to do to be a good nun. And we would like practice our like songs for our hymns for mass. I was such a bossy butt, but it was so fun. And so like there was just these pack of girls wearing their sweatshirts upside down their head, and like we were doing like vows and stuff. And finally one day I was giving a girl her final vows, and one of the sisters walked up and she's like, "Girls, what are we doing?" And the whole thing went kaput. Yeah, we weren't allowed to play that game anymore. And I understand why now. It truly came either from a power trip from me, but also we truly looked up to these women. But it was a little fishy. Oh man. But anyways, and then in high school I had Marian sisters, and with Marian sisters, just like the joy that oozes out of them, they're just so fun, and just every part of their day they just have this energy and like charism for joy and making you like feel wanted, and that like, you know, you're supposed to be here and I'm happy you're here. And I mean, I could barely do that on a Tuesday, so the fact that they did that to me every day, and I was such an angsty teenager, was just so beautiful. But anyways, also having priests in the classroom at Pius was really fun for me. I created a lot of beautiful friendships, and there was a phase in my life where, you know, that father figure was just kind of a confusing question mark for me, and kind of a hard relationship to have and to practice. I was just going through a lot at home, and so having an older male role model who obviously has an emphasis in the faith and in Christ, but also was a spiritual father to me during that phase, I will forever be grateful to those men and forever cherish what they taught me during that time. So I think another huge blessing in my Catholic education was being around and normalizing and creating relationships with the religious. Because I think a lot of times it's just like this far off concept and you see them in the movies and it's not accurate at all. I just really loved that. But I would say my junior high and high school years were really hard, especially on my faith. At that point, there's still a lot of confusion kind of embedded in, but then you add like the angst of a teenager, it just like gets exemplified a little bit. And at this point, I heard people say like they pray to God when they need things or want things. And so I was like, genie in a bottle, like if you're real, like help me ace this test. I'm definitely going to flunk it, didn't study for. It was a very conditional view of my faith. But probably one of the biggest fruits of that time frame that it was really hard for me was that my mother was kind of having her own reconversion. She had me really young, and so it was really cool that I got a front row seat to watch like a woman I love and I've idolized and looked up to for all these years in so many different facets. Like when I grew up, I just want to be like my mom. That's kind of the energy I had growing up. That seeing her fall in love with Christ, even though I was in my eye rolling phase, I do think it really impacted me in a deep way that, again, just like anybody, when you grow up, you aren't grateful for it till later on. My mom has this reconversion, and mind you, she's still a very good practicing Catholic this whole way through my childhood. Like she wouldn't be paying for a Catholic education and taking me to mass on Sunday if she didn't believe it. I think we are naive to think that you have like a conversion or you like grow up and have this like magic age where like, okay, now you're adult in your faith and everything's figured out, like everything. Because I thought all the Catholic adults, they just were perfect and knew everything. And so getting to witness my mom's like reconversion, which I would describe as her diving in a deeper way, in a more intimate way, her one-on-one relationship with Christ, getting to witness that and see her grow and see her like lifestyle change, her joy change, the way she walked around in the household, the things she did for us and led with us as a family. I think all of us, or my dad and my siblings, would attest that impacted them in a way. And it's just by like how she was living her life. But she had this reconversion. We went to World Youth Day to Spain. And I think being in those holy places really like made something come alive in her. And it was beautiful and perfect timing. While I was in this angsty, God isn't commanding my wishes, so who knows, I had a falling out with my biological father. And that was leading into my freshman year. And I'm not going to get into that too much, but I do think it really impacted my view of the Catholic faith and my relationship with Christ, because a lot of times we call God the Father, right? And that fatherly love and like a motherly love, like that parental love is always seen as unconditional and never ending and perfect. And I do think growing up, a lot of kids, we put our parents on really high pedestals and they're human like us. There was a lot of distance between my biological father and I, and there just was an absence and a pause in our relationship. We weren't talking and we weren't seeing each other, and it fell off. And the reason why it fell off didn't feel clear or fair to me. So there was, again, more confusion to it. And then this is the guy that wasn't necessarily ever on board with my Catholic faith, and now he's not really a part of my life right now. And I also think high school is just like a really hard time for anybody because you're trying to figure yourself out. Like you're an adult, but you're not, but you think you are. The confidence oozing out of us is so cringy when you think back to like high school you. That theology class, I eye rolled. And going to class mass, I just died. I was like, oh my gosh, this again. Confession, I said the same like 4 sins every single time. No true examination of conscience or repentance or desire in it at all. Just like very stagnant, going through the motions. I tried to like fake it, but also I didn't even care that if you noticed I was faking it. I just don't care. I think the relationships I had during that time with good adults who were practicing the faith helped me hold on to some of that, or be like, okay, like, yeah, like I'll listen to you. I don't really know or agree. I don't know if I believe exactly what you're saying about this God guy and how he feels about me, but I know like you're good and I know you're nice to me, that like I'll listen. It was just a dark, hard, poopy chapter in my life. And some of it was because of my own choices, so I take ownership. I mean, I think we all make choices when we're young that you're like, that was stupid, right? But I also think there's just some circumstantial things and some growing up things that were especially hard that kind of shook me up a little bit and made me question the God thing. And I didn't have enough energy or care to figure it out yet. I was just kind of like, I don't know if this God guy's really that good, because bad things keep happening. And so why would I want to put my faith in someone that lets bad things happen? That doesn't sound like a good God. So why would I waste time in that, I will say that, those relationships during that time really helped me. And I will also say my mom's reconversion at that phase was huge, because she was so big on youth ministry in my diocese. And my youth ministry had like all these super fun programs and things going on that whether I wanted to or not, I was going. And sometimes I wanted to, not gonna lie, for the trip or for the experience, but those times and those moments were building blocks for something bigger later on in my life. So yeah, I went on a canoe trip and we had mass on a lake. So cool. But I went more for the canoes than for Christ. But I will say there was joy had. There was genuine good joy had and witnessed and experienced, and priests with lightsabers and canoe flipping and waterfalls. And I've gone to a couple World Youth Days, and there were a lot of times I was not the best passenger princess on those, and my patience was short, and I treated it like a vacation more than a pilgrimage, which is like literally the number one rule of what you're not supposed to do on those things. But there were graces being built up, and there were some lies being debunked in that, of seeing these holy places and knowing they're just not pictures in the book. And also, whether maybe I wasn't feeling it, maybe I was like, oh my gosh, waiting till we could get gelato. But looking around and seeing other people's experience of it definitely touched me, and definitely made me think or second guess those doubts I was really clinging on to. So I don't want to get too long into my story, because I don't want this to be too draggy or long, but the takeaways, yes, I was a cradle Catholic, but I think a lot of times people assume like cradle Catholic means because you were raised in that, you had it all figured out and you just bought in and you just were 100% committed the whole time. And that is the furthest thing from the truth. Do I think there are gifts and fruits of being raised in a household where your faith is a priority? Duh. But do I think that there is an emphasis and a point and a purpose to also understanding that even with all the tools available, you have to make that step to discover Christ? Absolutely. Absolutely. And so even though like the story and phase of my life that I shared with you about my upbringing and my Catholic education and stuff, it doesn't sound like I had it all figured out. It doesn't sound like I was the perfect child or perfect Catholic. I was going through the motions of things, faking things. I'm just being honest with my experience. And I also want people to understand that maybe I had a hard time during those chapters in my life, or maybe I didn't get the full kumbaya moments and heaven's parting. And, I was such a saint with a little halo. That wasn't my experience. I think that could be somebody's. That wasn't mine. But growing up, and looking back, I see things now I didn't see then. And I see good that I took for granted. And the biggest thing that was so undisputable and undeniable that will later benefit me so much during even lower lows than I thought I would ever experience is example. I think that the thing that saved my cradled childhood faith, that childhood Catholicism, is that I was surrounded with people who had that encounter and who knew Christ. And even though I was a chatty Cathy or annoying little third grader or a little nun fifth grader or an eye-rolling angsty teenager, I was treated with such love. And when I was mouthy and annoying and rude, I encountered mercy and forgiveness and understanding. And I had people who supported me when I questioned things of why do we even do this? Why do we even do that? And they said, well, I don't know. Why don't you figure that out? Or that's a great question. Let me show you this. And I don't think I even appreciated it that much then. But I know that when I truly made my faith my own later on, I wouldn't have known where to look and I wouldn't have known where to start if I didn't have that upbringing and I didn't have those people. Because even if I didn't understand the concept of everything or the church and the teachings and the traditions, I knew God was real because the people I met and the people I love were so Christ-like to me that they must have learned it from someone, or they must have been shown it, that if they were able to give it to me, especially when I don't deserve it, it must be real. even though I don't get it. It must be real. And little peanut brain Lexi wouldn't have even fathomed or understood what that meant. But looking back, I see that now. That's why I didn't give up. And that's why when I really wanted to give up, I searched for the truth. And it is because people taught me how to search for the truth, where to search for the truth, and why it was good. It's not bad. It's not bad to wonder why we do this. What's going on? I don't understand this. This is hard to accept. I didn't get hit with a ruler and told to shut up and sit down and say a Hail Mary. I was told, yeah, that's a really good question. What are you going to do about it? I was challenged. I was pushed. And I was also led. And so thank you to all the adults who had to endure me as a child, and especially all the amazing examples and leaders and teachers and just all of you that impacted me, because I don't know if I would have found my way home without you. Thank you. And I love you. And, if this has you thinking back to when you were younger or your journey to Christ, I think a great challenge would be to take a minute, take a beat, and pray in thanksgiving for that person or people who were Christ-like to you or who led you to Christ. And I also think too, if you have a beautiful opportunity or a chance, I think you should reach out to them and tell them, because sometimes, and especially as a Catholic teacher, sometimes in this line of work or in life, sometimes you're trying to do the right thing. You're trying to be good to the people you care about, and you just don't know if it's working. That getting that little reassurance or that little thank you note means the world. And it helps them not lose hope or not lose faith, and maybe helps them to reach out to that kid that they're having a really hard time to. So if you don't have anything to do this week, you got homework from me. Reach out and thank somebody who helped you go back home to Christ and help you return to Christ. We all return at very, very different times and phases and stages. But I think sometimes us Cradle Catholics breeze over or don't really pause and look back and think, I might not have appreciated it then, but dang, I see it now. And I wouldn't have been at this point if I didn't have them at that point. So if you got something out of this, please feel free to share this with a friend. If you stumbled upon this and you heard Lexi's tangent of playing nuns at recess, wow, I can't believe you made it to the end. And thanks for stopping by. If you're never again, totally fine. But please just take a minute and pray that this podcast is used for God's will and how he wants us to use it. And lastly, I just hope that you guys have a magical, wonderful, amazing day. And please never forget to ponder the purpose, embrace the journey, and live the conversion. Thank you.